All right, we're back at it. And this time, we're here in beautiful Vancouver, Canada, where we're bringing you Next Level Practice podcast episodes live from the floor of the Aesthetic Meeting 2024. This is the annual meeting of the Aesthetic Society, or the American Society for Aesthetic Plastic Surgery. It's a meeting we never miss. Over these next few days, I'm going to be interviewing our clients and friends from around the industry to bring you up-to-the-minute insights on what's working and what's not when it comes to patient acquisition and practice growth. Here at Influx, we're very serious about keeping up with technological trends and studying how these changes impact the way that our clients grow their businesses. But I, for one, am a big believer that truly setting yourself apart comes down to the nuances. So let's take some time over these next few days to interview people on the ground floor of aesthetic medicine and see what we can learn from them to help you take your practice to the next level. All right, I'm here with our client, Dr. Brent Robinson from Salt Lake City, Utah. Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Robinson.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm super excited to sit down and have this talk because one thing I know from chatting with you a little bit, and we were just talking about this, is your philosophy of sort of not, and you'll do a better job of explaining it, maybe I'll let you do that, but I forget how you worded it, but sort of a non-competitive point of view or attitude about other surgeons and sort of helping lift each other up. And I think that's what this whole podcast is about, is let's talk. Yep. And that's what the Aesthetic Society is about, right?
Yep, 100%.
Let's all get together. And so that's what I want to do here today. But did I word it right? Do you feel like I did it, your philosophy justice?
I think so. Salt Lake City is a pretty saturated cosmetic market. But I don't think it's competitive in terms of, us kind of looking at each other as competitors. Especially with the younger kind of generation of plastic surgeons, it's pretty collaborative. I think we complement each other well. Everybody seems to be really busy. And so I think that kind of traditional, us against them kind of mantra is definitely not something that I've experienced.
I think that's so beautiful. I very much subscribe to that as it relates to, there's a lot of other marketing companies that have booths here.
Yep.
We've been coming to this meeting for years and we're friends with all of them, or, I at least am attempting to be. That's my goal. Some people may have different feelings about, maybe a little bit more. Their guard goes up a little bit more when another marketing company comes around, but I just believe in that firmly. I just came back from another meeting when another marketer I ran into texted me afterward, hey, it was cool to meet someone who just had that abundance mindset and wasn't closed off. And I was like, oh, that was a nice text to get.
Yeah.
I think that's the right way to go forward. The rising tide lifts all ships.
100%.
But at one point, am I correct? I don't know now since there's been so much migration around the country in the last few years, but Salt Lake, or maybe it was Utah, I heard, had the most plastic surgeons per capita. Is that true? Or do you know if that's
what I've been told. Yeah. So when I was talking to Adam about this last night, per capita, Salt Lake City has the most plastic surgeons in the country, which is crazy. But it is what it is. So.
Yeah, well, so you would think it'd be more of a competitive, but it's cool that you have a community where you're where you're not running into that.
Yeah.
So, okay, now let's dive into some of that sharing. Yeah. And so this podcast is about marketing. Yeah. And whether you're a marketing expert or not, you have a perspective. Every surgeon and our clients who we interview have a perspective from their personal journey of starting practice, going into private practice, growing a practice. Yep. And I want to hear from them the nuances of what they found was right for them. And it's not the same thing for everybody, right? There's a different mix. Yep. But I'd love to kind of hear, you've been in practice now, what is it, 9 months you said?
9 to 10 months, so yeah, it's been relatively new. But I would say that the growth has been interesting. So I would say that my kind of focus on marketing and just my overall kind of approach to my practice is just really trying to deliver, great patient outcomes and really providing excellent level of care. And what I mean by that is, I think there's a lot of really talented surgeons in Salt Lake City, but it goes to the level of, I call every patient after surgery, the night of surgery, say, hey, how you doing? Anything you're worried about? Any concerns? Any questions that I can answer? I have generally pretty much an open door policy with my patients. If they have any concerns after surgery, just call the front desk, let them know you're coming in. We'll get you on the schedule if you have any concerns. So it's it just is kind of that level of service, and I think that that's paid dividends in terms of, patients that then are happy with their outcomes, and then they talk to their friends, and their friends talk to their friends, and so it's kind of this web of patients that has gone out, and I have just noticed, recently just kind of exponential growth in terms of how busy I've gotten, and it's been great to see. And, a lot of that comes through social media and just trying to post informative information about kind of, what's the difference between submuscular breast augmentation, what's the difference between subfascial, why do we choose submuscular versus subfascial, and using social media as an outlet to educate, and then also show, results and kind of what is possible, and trying to show all kind of body types and all patient populations, and, all of that kind of diversity of what plastic surgery, can achieve.
That's you brought up some really, I think, important points on that educational content that you're doing, and I want to ask you a few questions. But first, I just want to say, I think the whole goal of the society here, and all of your fellow members would say they're striving for those great outcomes. They're striving for a high level of care. But it's interesting to me that you answered that in answer to the question of what's working for you marketing-wise.
Yeah.
And there are some who I think absolutely understand this, but I think it's just interesting to understand, the number one policy in marketing is a great service, great results, great product, great outcome, whatever it is that you do. So that's really interesting, and obviously that brings about the word of mouth.
Yeah.
But you still have to, at all times, even if your word of mouth reaches even a critical mass, you still need to have some source of new, right?
Yeah.
Right. So.
Yeah.
And it sounds like social media is one of those. I know we work with you on the web side of things. Yep. What I want to ask you on the social media, though, is curious to get your take. So you're a younger doc coming in, and it's really cool to see this new generation coming in. We've talked to people who even it's far less these days, but even still say, I never had to do marketing. I'm still hesitant on it from kind of the last generation of surgeons. They never had to market now. And so it's just not native to them.
Yeah.
So social media, you basically almost grew up with it, right? Would you say?
To some degree.
We have this. I've heard this term. I don't mean grew up with it from birth, but most of your formative years, it's around.
Yeah.
There's a saying where maybe it's sort of the millennials, Zennial, they say Zennial, sort of in between Gen X and Millennial, where analog childhood, digital adulthood.
Yeah.
And we do have an advantage. I'm about to be 41, and I do think we have an advantage.
We're the same age.
We're right there. Are you 41?
I'm going to be 41 this month.
Okay, I'm 41 in 2 weeks.
There you go.
So look at that. And I think there's a nice advantage to kind of not being so far away from these things that they're totally foreign to us, but we also kind of understand.
Right.
We're grounded in some more digital or analog things growing up. But so, it sounds like you really understand social media, but something that I think a lot of people struggle with is the effort that goes in and the reward that comes out in terms of how they should measure it. And I think a lot of people are looking at views and followers.
Yes.
And I definitely, obviously, those matter, but I'm curious to get your insights on what you get out of a post that maybe only gets a couple hundred views, or let's talk about that a little bit.
So I will. Full disclosure, my social media following is very low, but the interesting thing that I find is when patients come in consultation, even though that they don't follow me, they have seen all of my work. And so I think one point that's really important, especially to the younger generation that are is coming out of training into private practice, is that it doesn't matter if you have 100,000 followers. It is your CV to the world of what you can do. And you can't look at critically in terms of I only got so many views on this or that. It is something that is critically important in terms of just showing patients, what you can achieve in terms of your surgical outcomes. And then I think the educational component that we kind of talked about is, can you educate patients about, procedures? Can you educate surgeons the difference between, a board certified or board eligible plastic surgeon and a cosmetic surgeon, and the difference in training? And that's critical, because there's a lot of infringement that's occurring in plastic surgery. There's a lot of providers that are not formally trained in plastic surgery. They're kind of slowly coming into the game, and I take care of a lot of complications from other states, unfortunately, and we all have, everybody has complications, but the issue is that sometimes they're not appropriately taken care of afterwards and kind of pacified, by some of these other practices. And so, I think that is all kind of stems back to this new avenue of social media. I mean, this new format that we're seeing, and I think it really helps, inform the general public about some of these really nuanced procedures. Some of these, like what's the difference between a deep plane facelift versus mass plication, and all these kind of really complex things that are hard for a lot of people, even some plastic surgeons, to fully, comprehend.
It's interesting you said this new avenue, and obviously social is not all that new to you. For anyone, it's been a long time, but I would actually say that what we're seeing today on social media is actually still only a few years old, because it's not pictures of your food anymore.
Right.
And yeah, you do want to maybe pepper in some of that personal stuff. I actually think that goes a long way.
I agree.
But we moved to short form video content, and we're not that deep into that era. We're seeing practices now really understand, and they have for a while, the kind of early birds have understood that they need to invest in this, but more and more we're seeing the dominoes fall and people hiring full-time people just to help produce short form educational content. So that is kind of new still.
Yeah.
And something that I've observed, and I think every conversation I have with a client or a surgeon, I think continues to prove this, is that almost no matter how the patient first discovers you, they will go through your social in part of the process of vetting you.
Yep.
And the worst thing you can have is nothing.
Right.
The second worst thing, or actually it may be debatable as even worse, is to have something where you haven't posted in a very long time. So it's like kind of crickets, and you're like, well, what happened? Did they go away? And then you might, and then having educational content to vet you, even if it's not hundreds of thousands of followers and views, is really important to that conversion.
Yep.
And I would curious to get your take on this. When you're answering a question, as you start to ideate on what sort of subject matter you're going to create content-wise, it's sort of funny because you're going, well, these are nuanced questions that maybe people aren't. Where do you enter in on their sort of knowledge? But I wonder if it's, and you're sort of like trying to answer common questions. You're trying to answer questions that maybe people are frequently asked questions. But how much of it is the exact question, or maybe them just seeing that you're knowledgeable and seeing your sort of demeanor, right? And the nuances of it, they're going to have to understand. They're going to have to see you and talk about questions that are personal to them. But it's mostly just probably about demonstrating your expertise and your personality a little bit, right?
Totally. Yeah. And I had the ability to work with a patient that was, kind of a local influencer, and I did some procedures on her, and she's a great patient. And one of the most telling things that we did was that she's got a pretty big following, and we did some go lives on TikTok. And so to answer your question in terms of how to kind of generate content and how to have that filter, because you have to remember that sometimes, these meetings we come to, like the technical understanding of the level that we kind of go to in terms of the nuances between, deep plane facelift and extended mass plication and all these like really kind of complex things. Like, sometimes it's just too much depth. And so the questions that come up on this Go Live TikTok when we'll do these sessions are really profound, elemental kind of foundational questions. It's like, what are my options, for a breast lift versus implants? And just kind of like giving men and women just kind of those answers in terms of, it's like, well, we can look at doing a breast implant with a breast lift. We can look at doing just a breast lift. We can look at doing one of my favorite procedures, a breast lift with fat grafting. And so there's like, and then it's like, well, what is fat grafting? We've heard that, the fat all gets reabsorbed. What is that? And it's like, well, we can go back to some of the research and kind of break down, kind of what the research says about that. And so when you go through these TikTok lives or even patient comments on Instagram in terms of like asking these kind of foundational questions, I think it helps to kind of reorient, what your patients are looking for and some of the questions that they might have. And that to me, has been really helpful in trying to kind of navigate, which direction to kind of take that educational component with social media.
I think that is such a valuable insight as it pertains to how you decide what content you should create.
Yep.
The stuff that comes up live is maybe the most telling because it's right in the moment. It's that urgent, most pressing curiosity that they have.
Visceral, like.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think when you're expert in anything, you have the tendency to overshoot the mark and get into so much complexity and forget that you're talking to someone who's, way behind you in terms of the level of knowledge you have in the subject that we're talking about here, plastic surgery. So that's fascinating. How do you feel as a surgeon? I'm going to say young because I want to believe that I'm young too, 41. Do you feel like younger patients are looking for a younger surgeon?
Good question. I was expecting that to be the case. And, when I first came into practice, like in the first month or two, I had a lot of patients that would come in and they're like, how long have you been doing this for? And I was like, well, I did almost 10 years of training, 10 years of residency with general surgery and plastic surgery. And I don't know if I've just become more confident or my delivery has changed, but I've had very few, patients ask, like, have you done this a lot? And that came up a lot early on, but it almost never comes up at all anymore. Whether or not the patient demographics, because my partner is older than me, my senior partner, I would say that I have a slightly younger clientele, but I do have patients that are a little bit older as well. I also really try to push innovation because I'm really so I have this really interest in regenerative medicine and trying to implement that into practice. I have this interest in really trying to go to these meetings, watch videos, talk to, people at University of Pittsburgh where I trained, and trying to always add something to make my outcomes better. And so I always have this this growth mindset to try to, be really self-critical of my results. And it's like, what can I do better? Each and every surgery, and there's things that I change constantly, tweak a little bit here and there. And so I think that maybe resonates with sometimes a little bit of a younger demographic. But I see a little bit of both. So.
Okay, I was going to say, it sounds like that hunger and passion you have to always be better comes through a little bit versus sort of like, I'm in the little later half of my career, I kind of know how I do things, I'm set in my ways. Yeah. And I would be looking for that. I would be interested in the person who still feels that they're a student and that they need to be on top of the changes that are happening versus sort of, I have what I do, it's down, I'm not changing it. Yep. But also, I put myself in the shoes, particularly I feel like of a female looking to do a body procedure, and I would think I would want to be with a surgeon that really understands kind of present modern day body aesthetic because it changes. Yeah. So I don't know, but I would think if I was in those shoes, I would be looking for that. But you brought up another point, which was coming into practice, and we have talked to a lot of docs who are starting out and they have to get over that first hurdle of, well, how long have you been doing this? Yeah. But it sounds like the confidence just sort of overrides that when it comes into place, right? And then they don't even ask you.
Right. And I'm not sure what has changed, but I was talking to our patient coordinator, and we were just recently talking about how interesting it was that kind of early on there was that kind of have you done this quite a bit? And it's like, well, almost 10 years, but that hasn't come up for probably months, to be honest.
I think that's fascinating because I think in anything, if you come in with enough confidence and it's genuine and it comes through, then people they don't even think to ask. Yeah. And it's almost like you don't need to pre-address it if you're the confidence goes a long way. I think that's good advice for.
And maybe some of that is secondary to social media, my Influx website in terms of now the website that you guys did has before and afters on it, so patients can actually kind of validate your work and kind of validate what your surgical skills can achieve. So maybe that's part of it too, because I would imagine that most patients, certainly I would look at the surgeon's work before coming for.
It's the most frequently visited pages on all of the websites that we do. Yeah. But you hit on exactly what I was trying to articulate when you talked about the website. Your photos being the most important, your results, your before and afters, but the website itself. That's kind of where I was trying to go. I have a philosophy. Myself, I'm one of the co-founders of Influx, and my business partners and I decided to start Influx a long time ago, and it was founded on the idea that a website that has a certain appearance will instill trust tacitly. And if you have to say it, you lost it. If they just feel it and they don't even think there's no room for doubt, let's put it that way. If you're a luxury brand and you say we're a luxury brand, you're no longer a luxury brand. Yeah. So they just have to come and the trust is instilled. And the first impression matters a lot, just the first seconds. And then right after that, you can guarantee, like you said, they're going to be looking at your gallery, your photo gallery, and those have to follow through with great results. And then if they see you on social media, they get your personality. And if all of what they think they saw turns out to be true upon walking in the practice, then you pretty much strike gold. And that leads me to the last thing I wanted to ask you. All right, I have 2 more questions. Is that all right? You got a few more minutes?
Time.
I appreciate you spending this time with us.
Yeah.
Which is the consult itself. So we talked a little bit earlier about this. I want to talk marketing here on this podcast, but an extension of the marketing is that, okay, now you've got the lead, now you got the consult appointment booked. The next step is, in the sequence, is that they walk in the door for that consult. And you told me something staggering about your consult, we'll call it conversion rate from consult to actual surgery.
Yeah.
What did I just want to make sure I don't get it wrong. What would you say?
It's been relatively pretty high. So last couple clinics we were close to about 100%. So it's been, and I don't ever try to basically get somebody to book based upon trying to get them to convert, but I think we provide excellent services, and so I think a lot of that comes down to just meeting a patient kind of where they are, and having reasonable expectations, and basically kind of seeing what they want to kind of get out of proceeding with aesthetic surgery. It's the most kind of elective thing that you can do, and so we are basically kind of meeting them where they are, and we just want to kind of deliver on what they want, assuming that those expectations are something that we can achieve.
When you say meet them where they are, I think I know what you mean, but I want to unpack that, because it sounds like you're taking the time to actually understand them, is what you're saying by meet where they are, right?
100%.
But this is not something, I think it's something can be worked on. I think anyone can work on it. But there's also some natural ability to being empathetic, right?
Big time.
I think some people don't pick up on the cues and clues, but some people, if you kind of have that social knack, you kind of go, okay, I can kind of get what this person is trying to achieve, what makes them nervous, what makes them scared, what is their emotional motivators, right?
Exactly.
Truly understanding those.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, just kind of seeing, what the patient's motivation is for the procedure, seeing, what their concerns are in terms of, moving forward, and trying to fit them with the correct procedure for what they're trying to obtain. Sometimes, for instance, we'll have a patient that'll come in, maybe that's, mildly overweight, and the common one would be coming in for liposuction of the abdomen. And I have to explain that, if we do liposuction, I always kind of use this analogy that liposuction, if this is your abdominal wall, will shrink down basically the fat component of your abdominal wall, right? So we can actually physically remove fat, but it does not address the overlying skin. So we can fix one problem, but then we create a redundant kind of skin laxity issue. And so for you, I know what your goal is to kind of reduce, this fatty area, but essentially it might be a better, procedure for you to proceed with like an abdominoplasty or a tummy tuck, where we actually address both that region with liposuction, but also with excision of skin. And so it's kind of trying to redirect patients in the right area and just kind of inform them. I never tell patients that come in for an abdominoplasty, like, well, you might want to do a rhinoplasty as well, or something completely unrelated, right? Like, I think that's completely inappropriate. The other thing that I see all the time that I think is crazy is that patients will come in and they've been to 3 other consults, and they said, oh yeah, the last consult that I was at, the plastic surgeon said he would only put in 600 cc implants. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me, right? Like, this is the most elective procedure that you can proceed with. So it's like, we can talk, and if you tell me like you want something crazy like 600 cc implants, I'm going to talk to you about, there's problems with bottoming out, skin stretch.
Oh, they would only put in 600?
They would tell the patient what size implants they would put in, and it was like non-negotiable. And this is common. This is not, and it might be a little bit generational. They
want to be they're sort of saying, this is my decision, my expertise.
Where my approach is, completely shared decision making. Like,
it's gotta be.
Let's talk, let's try on sizers, I can tell you what the most common, to kind of give you like a benchmark, like our most common size is 355 cc's, which is, most patients now are coming in and they say, I just want to look natural. Like, maybe I had a couple kids and I have some breast drooping and I want to look natural. And it's kind of meeting them there. But to get back, it's always shared decision making, kind of discussing with the patient what their goals are. And I think if you meet the patient kind of where they are and you try to understand what their motivations are and you set appropriate expectations, then I think everything works very harmoniously and it's a very nice relationship. So
I would agree in my own experiences in different worlds, but that same taking the time, caring, empathizing goes a tremendous way. We have worked and talked to some doctors who maybe don't have the time or have set themselves up to not spend that time with the patient, and they're maybe looking for something just a little bit of a quicker, maybe more templated, more formatted consult. But I really always try to stress the importance of that because if you think about it from the perspective of just marketing cost, one of the best ways that you can save and bring down your marketing costs is convert more of who comes in the door. And if you can convert anywhere close to 100%, 90%, 80%, it actually pays back in spades to spend that extra time. But it isn't
100%.
Just time; it's actually caring, which is what you're saying.
Yep. And then the value of patient retention, and I think that component is really, patients can come in for a consult, get surgery, and be gone. But I think it goes that extra step, calling the patient after surgery, how are you doing, and having the patient know that they were well taken care of and that somebody really cared about their outcome, really cared, how they're doing on a day-to-day basis, and just providing that. It's just something that I feel like is kind of intrinsic to my philosophy and my approach. I think that ultimately will kind of pay dividends in patient retention. So,
well, clearly you already know you're right because you're on the right path and you're seeing the results. But also from my experience, I have been in marketing for aesthetic medicine, plastic surgery for about 12 years, and I can tell you, and honestly, it's my experience in other business verticals too, that's a common thread with people who have success is they just set up a foundation of just doing great work, caring about the outcomes, and they always have a successful career by building on that foundation. So in the spirit of, on that note of a successful career, and I'll kind of leave it here so I can let you get on about the meeting. You've been in practice 9 months. You joined an established practice with an established sort of partner, as you said. And I'm curious what advice you would give to young surgeons going into practice. I'm curious what made you decide to go with the practice that you went with to join that practice, and also just what advice you would give for young surgeons just going out on their own.
So I originally from Colorado, trained at University of Pittsburgh. My wife is a pediatric rheumatologist, which is like a crazy, super specialized.
Yeah, no kidding.
The most specialized you can get. And I wanted to be back in the mountain kind of setting. And so, Colorado, Utah, they were all kind of great fits. There happened to be a job in Salt Lake City, and so it was just a great fit. And then I was fortunate to get connected to my kind of current partner just through people that I knew. And, that transition, it's been great. I would say that trying to find somebody that can offer some level of mentorship. And what I mean by that is not so much on the technical aspects of surgery, but almost the business and the workflow and the marketing of how a private practice runs. Because that transition from residency and fellowship into private practice is something that is very different from academia. I mean, I've been in academia for so long. You start to get into things like marketing and overhead and scheduling and all these unique things that are not taken care of by this large hospital system that just kind of does all of that for you. And so I would say, joining somebody that can offer some level of mentorship is important. Creating a footprint in social media, and I think it all gets back to just taking care of patients well, just being honorable and just trying to really just do the right thing and take care of patients, like you were trained to do.
Yeah, it's all great advice. And the last bit is, I think, like I said, a timeless pattern that I've seen win again and again. So,
I
appreciate you spending this time. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
And I hope you enjoy the rest of the meeting.
Yeah, sounds good.
Thank you, Dr. Robinson.
Appreciate it.